Chapter 12. After wandering around town trying to locate his self-worth and succeeding only in blank-eyed mumbling, which combined with his state of dress seemed to freak out several grannies in the Sue Ryder shop, Evan arrived home still drowning in utter disgust and self-loathing. Dread was tearing at his guts, his head warring between whether to keep the events of the afternoon secret or blab his heart out to relieve the oppressive guilt. He found Flora standing in front of the fireplace, her arms crossed. She no longer looked worried, but something else seemed to be brewing. A burp she couldn't suppress broke the silence, and it drew Evan's attention to the 3 crushed beer cans on the coffee table. Brewing, indeed. She looked like she was ready for a fight, but couldn't prevent a double take and the small smile that followed. "Evan, you cut your hair?" "Yeah. It's what you wanted, wasn't it?" he replied gruffly as he ran his hand over the short bristles on his scalp, wincing slightly as he caught the painful lump on the back of his head. Evan had never had hair so short. He'd done it for Flora, and to punish himself. Most of all, he'd done it because he felt so disgustingly dirty when he'd left that hotel room, like sleaze was in every pore of his skin and fibre of his hair. Cripes, what is that, a number 2 all over? Can I have a feel? That's not exactly what I meant when I suggested you get it cut. Flora crossed to where Evan stood with his head slumped. He looked exhausted and defeated. She cupped his jaw and raked the fingers on her other hand from the nape of his neck to his crown. It made him shudder, and she laughed softly. He lifted his eyes, and the sadness there made her lose her train of thought. "You know," she said kindly, "if I thought you were going to buzz it all off, I could have done that for you myself." She considered his ruggedly beautiful face. "It suits you, though. You look less angelic and more like a bad boy." Much more fitting, she couldn't help but think. Flora's index finger traced the V-shaped peak in his hairline. Evan had noted before that it was a spot that seemed to fascinate her. The way she touched him was almost reverent, like it meant something, like he meant something. And what did he offer in return? He looked at her bleakly and turned his face into the hand caressing his jaw, kissing Flora's palm softly, before chancing a glance into her eyes, feeling sure all the lies in his own were evident. Without warning, Flora pushed him back, and he nearly lost his balance. "You almost made me forget I'm angry with you." Evan swallowed. How could she possibly know already? "Why didn't you just tell me you were an author?" The discovery of Evan's other secret threw him, not knowing whether this scenario was better or worse. "How did you find out?" "I took my cue from you and Googled your name. What's with the big secret, anyway?" "Fucking hell," Evan swore at his stupidity. "I need the bog. I'll be back in a minute." "Oh no, you're not getting away with that. You can tie a knot in it and come here and tell me what's going on." Evan cursed under his breath again and tried to run his fingers through his hair. Shit, he really missed his hair now too. All that was left was to sigh in resignation. "You are too clever by halves, and what I say now will make you either laugh in my face or kick the shit out of me. You aren't writing about me, are you?" Flora registered the pink tinge of guilt flushing his pale Scottish skin. It crept from Evan's throat and rose to his cheekbones. "You swine. You are, aren't you?" "Sort of." "What does that mean? Are you branching out into books on the theory and history of dog grooming? Because I don't know what else you might glean from me." Evan's blush deepened. He'd secretly been writing since he first regained the tingles, standing semi-naked in Siobhan's kitchen. The story ideas had unfurled in his head. Not that it was taking much unfurling. He was pretty much stealing it straight from real life. Flora's real life. "If it's any consolation, you are the heroine of the piece." "No, bog brush for brains, it's not a bleeding consolation. What are you writing?" Flora's deeply affronted face could have almost been comical. He tried to play for time, embarrassed about what he was going to admit. "It's a romance novel," he mumbled. "Pardon? Even the dog's hearing couldn't have picked up that little mutter. "It's a romance novel," Evan practically yelled in mortification. The words seemed to echo in the room. Flora slapped her hands over her eyes in clear disbelief. "Are you joking right now?" she yelled, mouth open and agog. "No, God help me, I'm deadly serious, Flora." Flora's face was now as beetroot as his. Hot streaks flared along her cheekbones, and her soft mouth had become a hard crimson line. Brown eyes blazed with anger and recrimination. "So all the sex and the being sweet to me was research? You've been directing this whole show since the minute you turned up. God, it's all just fallen into your lap, hasn't it? You found yourself a set of ready-made characters." Flora raged on without pausing for breath. "How's it going to be, Evan? Like a Jilly Cooper novel with cute animals and I'm the fat put-upon protagonist? Am I the hard-up girl who's lucky enough to be shagged by the devilishly out-of-her-league hero? What's the title? Wait, I've got a good one. Flora and the git-faced lying bastard. That's catchy, isn't it?" Evan's fists clenched in frustration. He was guessing now wouldn't be a good time to announce he'd just been oral sex raped, and could he have a minute to get his head on straight before he answered. "It was never my intention to use you." "Liar!" A nervous grin tipped Evan's mouth, and Flora wanted to smack the temerity right off his sculpted lips. The sexy new haircut was also entirely annoying right now. "You're right. That was a lie. But I never meant for you to become invested in me. I breezed in here thinking we could have a mutually beneficial fling, and I would leave with a clear conscience and write my puffy little romance. I didn't expect to like you so much, and to say I'd not bargained for everything else that's happened is an understatement." "And what exactly are you implying when you say I'm invested in you, you arrogant pig?" "You think you're not?" There was a touch of smugness in his voice, and that did it. Flora launched into him, and her hand rose fast, poised to make a new dent in his nose. Evan caught her wrist in time and squeezed it gently. "You're invested in me, Flora, like I'm invested in you." He crooned to her in soft Scottish undertones. His bright blue eyes, fringed with long tawny lashes, radiated sincerity, and for a moment Flora was stupefied. Then all the tension leached out of her as she dropped her head to Evan's chest, breathing hard. A big, warm hand enveloped her neck and held her there, while his full, soft lips nuzzled her temple. It was calming and soothing, and she felt like she needed petting. Flora had never empathized more with a dog in her life. Evan whispered into her ear, "I'm right there with you, and just as confused." It was a sad little voice that huffed. Then what was all this escort business about? Research. A desperate quest for a book, a hint of a story. I came here to wing it and do whatever I could to get unblocked. And now there is a story to be resolved, even if it's one that's never published. He took her by the shoulders and dropped his head so that he could meet her eyes. "I can't let you push me away. You need me." Flora shrugged off his grip. "So that's it? I sell my soul to the devil and in return I get your protection? That's a bloody high price to pay." Evan raised his eyes to the ceiling, feeling like anything he said was crucial. "Didn't I say I won't write it if you don't want me to?" "That's my problem. You see, I'm not selfish enough to ask you to stop. You deserve something out of this whole mess, and I'm stupid enough not to refuse you." She sank onto the sofa, feeling the depressing aftermath of too much beer and revelation. "But it will change things." "Why?" Evan leaned over, lifting Flora's chin to look into her big, pensive eyes. Her hands came up in a gesture of helplessness. "Because how can I respond to you naturally? I'll be wondering how every word sounds, how every touch looks on paper." "Ah, shit, Flora." Evan felt like he was sinking, his notch on the asshole meter flying all the way to mega butthole. "Maybe I should read it. Would that make me feel any better?" Evan broke out of his moment of self-flagellation. "I don't know. It's pretty raw yet. I want to get a sense of how you see me. Make sure I'm not too ridiculous. Are you in it as well? Well, let me see. Apart from the fact I've made him Welsh, he's tall, attractive, got a suitably heroic penis, and he's an arse. So yes, I'd say it's pretty autobiographical. Go get it. I want to see it, please. Evan sighed heartily, and Fillmore cocked his head from his position on the chair arm. The schnauzer gave him a severe look. It was a "you better make this good" look. Evan ruffled the dog's shaggy black eyebrows as he passed. You have no idea, big fella. No idea at all. Behind Suzanne's willowy figure, a pair of seductive, wide brown eyes peeked out at him. Gavin's mouth quirked as Suzanne tried her best to block his view of the other girl, the one that held his attention, before he could even see the full package. And you are? Iris. How do you do? All the better for meeting you two lovelies. Suzanne twittered at his feeble line. Iris's reaction was much more interesting. She rolled her eyes, and for Gavin a challenge was issued. She would fight, but she would end up in his bed. It was just a matter of when. Suzanne threw out the offer of a lift, and Gavin's eyes followed the curvy figure of Iris as she mumbled under her breath. She was struggling to bend demurely into the back seat of the car, glancing behind her in the hope that he wasn't watching. It was a miserable failure, and Gavin revelled in the delectable view of her round bottom straining the confines of her formal black skirt. He was terribly tempted to give a hand right there, right at the heart of the matter. Iris gave a little shriek as the split in the back of her skirt gave way, and she fell onto the seat in a heap. Gavin chuckled. God, she was going to be a handful. He pushed the upright back into place, enjoying trapping the girl behind him. She pursed her lips and stuck her nose in the air. Dear Lord, she had the sexiest little dimples in her cheeks. He wanted to lick them, wanted to lick her all over. Flora humphed, halting her reading for a moment. My skirt did not split. I knew you would insinuate I was chubby. Go check that skirt. I think you'll find it did. How else would I know you were wearing lace-topped hold-ups? Flora sucked in an outraged breath. You're such a git. Were you really thinking this stuff at the time? Pretty much. Wait until I've written the first sex scene. That's going to blow your mind. Evan, you're not going to follow this story too close to the truth, are you? I couldn't write the sex any hotter than it was, sweetheart. I'm new to this genre, so I might have to rely on eidetic memory for inspiration. Flora's brow wrinkled. What's eidetic memory? Evan's eyes dropped lazily to Flora's lips, and his voice switched to sexy Scottish superhero mode. Flora's body responded. He recognised the visual cues. Well, he growled softly, it's like photographic memory, and if I genuinely had it, it would explain why I can vividly recall every image of you naked, why I can still feel every single touch of your skin, why the scent of your arousal is like all my best days happened at once. It seems I have an eidetic memory for Flora. There was a long, potently charged silence. Flora's eyes widened. She was a little overwhelmed that he'd said something so beautiful to her. It was still hard to accept he could have that depth of feeling, so she chose to discount it. I'm starting to think you've been wasting your time on all those other books. You were born to write romantic claptrap. She tried to sound offhand, but subconsciously inched towards him on the sofa. Evan could see the pulse at the base of her throat tapping out a little soft shoe shuffle. If he weren't blatantly aware that at any moment she might notice the smell of Gemma's perfume, he would have made a move without hesitation. It could all be in his head, but it seemed like the stink was getting stronger. What had initially seemed expensive and exotic now curdled Evan's stomach. The return of the lingering disgust was sufficient to cool his ardour. He needed a scalding hot shower because he was thinking about the woman's saliva. Maybe then he'd finally feel somewhat purged. Flora didn't notice his shift in mood and sighed in confusion. I don't know how all of this works out anymore. At any moment, my job is going to implode because I may be forced to assassinate my boss's ex-husband. Then there's you. When I used to dream about my ideal man, I always tried to aim low. I wanted someone who was kind and always used deodorant, and he had to be at least an inch taller than me and willing to hold hands in public. That was it. Honestly, that was the whole list. I don't know how to deal with a gorgeous, successful, well-educated, well-hung, suspicious, frustrating man who is also kind to me but is stealing my deodorant. I'm currently without deodorant on my pits because of you. Evan shrugged. Looks don't count for much, and I'm patently not perfect, but I would hold your hand in public. Evan wished a relationship were just that simple. He hadn't settled the argument in his head over whether he even wanted a relationship, and here he was promising Flora. What exactly? She threw her hands in the air. This is driving me mad. It's like I trust you implicitly, yet I don't trust your motives. It's like I'm safe and scared to death at the same time. Flora's dark eyes begged him to be worthy. He'd never had a woman look at him with such honesty in her expression, so open, so willing to put her heart out there, even if it got stomped on. She was silently imploring him to do the right thing, and for once he'd met a woman he might do that for. Evan reached out and touched Flora's little finger. How about I make you feel a little better by quitting the escort business? It was an ignorant, ill-thought-out whim, and I only went through with it because I was getting desperate. Flora sucked in her cheeks, thinking about it. I don't know what to say. I won't lie, the idea of somebody else pawing you has been making me as sick as, well, a dog. Oh dear, it was like an impending calamity. Evan felt the burden of honesty, like a hod full of bricks on his shoulder. Why couldn't he lie to this girl and avoid hurting her? She didn't need to know, yet he couldn't prevent himself from unravelling. Flora, there's something I need to say, but it's probably going to upset you. It might be nobler to keep it to myself, but it feels like the two of us against the world here, and I don't want any more secrets between us. Evan dropped to his knees on the floor. I'd never been much good at holding in guilt, even when it would benefit me to keep my mouth shut. Flora's head tilted to the side and she gave him a cautionary eyebrow. If it's really bad news, I'm not sure I can cope with much more today. You can. You're going to have to, because my stomach's rotting with the knowledge of it. He savoured one final look at Flora while she still somewhat liked him, and then averted his eyes. Evan couldn't watch the disappointment form in her eyes when he uttered the next few sentences. Something happened today, and it's not an excuse to say it was against my will, but that's the truth. It's also the truth that if I'd been a better man, I would have made sure it didn't progress. But I was a bit slow on the uptake and tried not to cause any offence. Any offence? You slept with your client, didn't you? I knew it. I knew it would happen. I'm not even surprised. Flora shoved her head in her hands, but not before he caught the pain on her face that would haunt him to his dying day. No, I didn't, but she inveigled me into a blowjob. He could feel the heat on his face burn as he tried to explain. It went on longer than it should. I didn't finish and I didn't fuck her. I just didn't know how to extricate myself. Flora's head flew up. Oh dear, inveigled. Putting a pretty word on it makes it sound so much better. You poor man, suffering such a wicked inveigling. What a load of bullshit. How exactly do you not notice someone inveigling down your zipper? Flora's voice was hideously pained. It was like she'd just found out her big screen hero needed 4 stuntmen and a butt double. She was as thin as a rail, Flora, so thin it was hard to look. I turned her down, and she cried, said nobody ever found her attractive. She walked out the bathroom with no clothes on, and I couldn't get round her. I swear if the fucking window had been open, I would have willingly jumped out of it. Evan's eyes bored into Flora's, imploring her to understand. I was cornered, and I took my eyes off her for a second. That's all it took, and she was on her knees with my cock in her mouth. Where was I supposed to go from there? It won't help you to know that the only thing on my mind was you, but it's the truth. Flora's face screwed up so tight it looked painful. Gross! Thinking about me with someone else's mouth on your dick? Do you even hear yourself? How did it stop? Did you call it off or her? Evan knew there was no point hiding the rest. She had me on the brink and pulled away, asked me to fuck her. I looked at her lying there and I don't know how I didn't puke. Not about her or what she looked like, just revolt at the situation. I walked out and left her. Hell, Flora, I ran down the stairwell because I was too fucked up to wait for the lift. I thought she'd come after me. She was like a woman possessed. For whatever reason, that last sentence somehow triggered Flora's innately perverse sense of humour. She didn't understand it. She should be crying on her sleeve or kicking his ass. But those words, uttered in Evan's outraged Scottish burr, tickled her somehow. An unbidden snigger came out of her mouth. She tried to suppress it, and the inevitable snort popped out. Then the hysterical laughter commenced. Evan was instantly alarmed, thinking she was in shock. "Are you okay? Why are you laughing?" "It was horrible, Flora. I need to go upstairs and scrub myself raw." "Yeah," she hiccuped. "If anybody's going to scrub you raw, you bastard, it'll be me. It's not one bit funny, but I can't help picturing you helpless with your pants trapped around your ankles." Evan pushed back from her in horror. "Are you serious? That was the single most degrading experience of my life. That bitch was crazy. She had the bobby between her teeth." "Her teeth!" he exclaimed. "And they looked like titanium-reinforced implants. Do you know what that does to a man?" Flora squeezed her legs together, trying not to pee, and Evan recognised the gesture. "Flora, this is not a normal reaction that you're having." That sobered her slightly. "Yes, look, boy, keep telling yourself I'm the one that's not normal, and just because I'm laughing doesn't mean I'm not furious. I am. I just hope you learned a bloody good lesson." Flora leaned back. "God, let me think for 1 minute. I feel sick that some woman had her tongue on you and was slavering all over you." She felt struck by defeat and revulsion, but without a leg to stand on. Out of all the times she'd felt powerless in her life, this ranked as the worst. "Hell, Evan, what am I supposed to say? We're not together, and I had no claim on you when it happened. Do you realise what you look like? Any normal woman would push her luck, never mind some harpy willing to commit sexual assault." Flora felt tears well and brushed at them crossly. "But imagining you in that position makes me feel degraded too." Evan's whole body drooped. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart. So very sorry. There's not a better word that I can come up with." He picked up Flora's hand and laid it on his thigh. Playing with her fingers seemed to soothe him. "What do we do now?" Flora groaned. A part of her wanted to get rid of him, to lance the pain of him like a boil. "Evan, I am too tired and pissed off for all this. Bear in mind I've been battered from all sides since I woke up this morning, so how about you be the one to risk your feelings for once, and tell the bloody frigging truth while you're at it?" He kept his head down, sounding hesitant. "I want you, Flora. I don't know how this works or how we fit into each other's lives, but the one thing I know is that I can't lose you." She had to smile, no matter how reluctantly. For Evan, those words were a massive concession. "Then we don't talk about this any more, and no more acts of rank stupidity." "Fair enough. Want to hug it out?" Flora snorted in disgust, flicking away his hand as she realised she didn't know what it had last touched. "You've got to be kidding me. Get showered and boiled, brush your teeth a few 100 times, and maybe by tomorrow I'll have enough distance from this conversation that I can start to forgive you. Touching any part of your body will take much longer." She turned to stomp out of the room and Evan grabbed her arm. She looked down at it and then up into his eyes. Evan's light blue irises were once more sparkling and hopeful. "You really are the most amazing human being. No matter what I do, you deal with it with such grace." "Yeah, but be careful, Evan. No one's ever tested my limits as much as you." It was almost midnight, and Flora had gone to bed an hour ago. The tension from hurt feelings had lingered despite her best efforts, and Evan paused on the landing. He could hear the sobs she was trying to suppress and didn't know whether to intervene. He knocked gently, and when there was no reply, he cracked the door and poked his head around it. "Flora, are you okay?" A tennis ball belonging to Fillmore flew through the air and bonked him on the temple. "Ouch. I'm sorry. You know I'm sorry." "Oh, bugger, Evan. It's not all you, it's everything. There's just too much bloody awfulness," she sniffled. "I've been lying awake trying to figure out what to do, how to protect these dogs. What's going to happen when I lose this job? I'm exhausted and I can't sleep, and more than anything, I'm so flaming sick of feeling disheartened." Evan ventured inside and closed the door. Flora sat propped up in bed, her Kindle abandoned beside her. The quilt had a carpet of balled-up tissues, and her face was red and swollen. Flora's usually doe-like eyes sat like two wizened currants on the rounded buns of her cheeks. God help him, he must be in deep, because she still looked utterly adorable. Noting the intensity of his scrutiny, she shoved her head under the duvet. "No, don't look at me. I'm not a pretty crier." Evan smiled. Fillmore and Riley were watching quizzically from their shared bed in the corner. "Were you trying to read?" "Trying," she mumbled from under the covers. "It usually works when I'm upset, but not tonight. I can't concentrate. My whole rotten life has been spent trying to stop unscrupulous people from taking advantage." Without warning, Flora bellowed in frustration, which, even though muffled, made Evan jump out of his skin. From downstairs, Trike let out a mournful howl in sympathy, and the puppy farm dogs took up the refrain. Evan pulled the covers aside, and Flora scowled. "I can't even wig out in peace." Taking a seat at the foot of the bed, he picked up the e-reader that had gone to sleep. "What are you reading?" "Some rubbish with a better cover than its content. It was a freebie." "Want me to read to you?" "Is that your way of trying to get back in my bed?" "Would I try something like that?" Evan happily offered himself a verbal abuse. "I'd be more surprised if you didn't," she retorted. "Let me keep you company, sweetheart. I couldn't sleep across the way knowing you were sad." Downstairs the dogs were still variously singing and howling, and Flora slung one leg out of bed and stamped on the floor. Trike and his pals stopped chorusing abruptly. "I bet you wish you could train me so well." "That goes without saying," she replied, admitting defeat and tossing back the quilt, wordlessly inviting him in. Evan shucked off his shoes and settled back against the propped-up pillows. Picking up the device, he turned it on and scanned the first page as Flora slumped into his chest. He liked the way her head felt resting on his t-shirt-covered pecs, and Flora sighed with similar appreciation. He wedged his free arm around her waist. "This feels nice," she said. "I was never with anybody I could just snuggle." "I don't think I've ever let a woman just snuggle," Evan admitted, surprising himself with the realization. Geez, what a bastard that made him. His eyes returned to the story and he ran the first few lines in his head. "What is this shit?" "Just read it in your special Scotty voice and I can overlook the dialogue." "My special Scotty voice?" He looked at her and gave Flora a brow waggle. "Yes, you know exactly when you're using it, so don't give me that innocent face." He laughed. "Let's see what we've got here. It certainly seems to have all the required cliches in no particular order." Evan turned on the charm and the pitch of his voice dropped a whole octave. "Oh, baby, you're so wet, so tight. I can't wait to stick my enormous love muscle in your hot, sleek tunnel." If that wasn't remarkable enough, he then switched to a high-pitched, still Scottish, but verging on chipmunk voice for the female character. "Seth, please, baby, I'm dying for you. My little honeypot is so desperate for your big, hard cock." Evan's eyes widened in disbelief as he continued. Seth emitted a guttural roar as he yanked his fingers out of her treasure trove and replaced it with his massive member. Take it, baby, take it all. I'm going to fuck you until your legs burrow deeper than John Wayne's. For the rest of your life, you're going to feel like my cock is still inside you. That sounds quite inconvenient, Flora commented dryly. Baby, he squeaked, fuck me with your 13-inch cock. Annihilate my pussy. Rip me apart and split me in two. Evan panted heavily, getting disturbingly into character. Flora couldn't help sniggering. I'm guessing whoever wrote this is 13 years old and has never seen a cock in her life. I must admit, I've read a few of these now for research and I've never come across a 13-inch cock before. That seems a little ambitious. Bloody painful, more like. I quite like an 8 3/4 size myself. The compliment made him smile smugly and cuddle Flora closer. I think mine is quite big enough for annihilation purposes. Seth thrust into Serendipity's hot sheath without mercy, simultaneously squeezing both her breasts with his merciless male strength. One hand left her and began pinching her clit, making her scream out loud as he overpowered her throat with his tongue. See, these are the parts I don't get, Evan complained. When people write these scenes, they don't give any thought to whether that's physically possible. What do you mean? I mean, he flipped forward onto Flora and settled in between her thighs, smiling to himself when they automatically shifted to accommodate him. If I'm here pumping away, busy annihilating, so to speak, to illustrate his point, he began to dry hump her in a very distracting fashion. See, I'm resting on my elbows, or maybe on my palms with my arms locked. Again, he demonstrated the difference. If I'm also simultaneously squeezing your tits with both hands, I'm either resting all my body weight on your tits, or I've got miraculous coordination, because somehow I can grope, pump, and shove my tongue down your throat at the same time as supporting my own weight. These men are all bloody miracle workers. Me, I could support myself with one arm and tickle your clit or grope your breast with the other, but that's all you'd get in this position. Evan's eyes wandered. Lost in his theory on male coordination, he began a slow, contemplative grind on Flora's pubic bone. She shoved him off before his rapidly hardening crotch messed with her equilibrium. Thank you for that, Evan. I will expect when I read your story that impossible sex acts are not included. You know the other thing I don't get? I'm afraid to ask, Flora replied dubiously. The whole anal sex thing. Oh, I'm not discussing butt sex. She tried ducking under the covers, but Evan yanked them loose again. In these romance books, it's like par for the course, sometimes even on the first date. The first girl I ever tried that on freaked out completely. When I asked her why, she told me there was no way any part of me was going anywhere up there because there was always poop up her bottom and no room for anything else. Evan! I'm just saying, in these books they're nearly all at it, and when they're finished with their fingers and their dicks up there, very rarely do they go and freshen up. Plus, the girl never says, sorry, but I'm really constipated right now. Can we put that on the back burner until I go for colonic irrigation next week? Nobody is ever going to say that in a romance novel. No, but the second girl I ever tried it on with said that. I kid you not. Evan, you are repugnant. Yes, and Flora, sweetheart. Fair warning, you're next for the question. Come to think of it, there wasn't really an arse worth doing until I saw yours. Flora blustered, rendered speechless for once. Evan waggled his brows at her, deadly serious. I do not intend to respond politely to that. You've got a nerve even suggesting it after the day you've had, you cheeky Scottish bastard. Ha! I don't hear you saying no. Flora finally managed to yank the quilt from him and covered her glowing cheeks. A much muffled reply came from the depths of the winter-weight duvet. Yeah, you made your point. Now can we get back to Seth and Serendipity? I'm a bit afraid he has premature ejaculation problems. Yeah, like that's ever gonna happen.